They mocked his clothes before they knew his name. 3 flight attendants laughed behind his back as Nathaniel Carter boarded first class in traditional African attire. "Lost on the way to a costume party?" one whispered. But within minutes, everything would change. Because Nathaniel wasn't just another passenger. He was the architect of a system their airline desperately needed. And he was about to call the CEO by his first name, in front of everyone. What happened next turned a routine flight into a corporate reckoning. Stay with me. This story doesn't just punch back. It rewrites the rule book. Nathaniel Carter walked with measured grace through the jet bridge of Apex Airways Flight 711, his stride confident, his posture upright. He wore a tailored ensemble that paid homage to his West African heritage. A striking navy blue agbada embroidered with silver geometric patterns that shimmered subtly under the airport lights. To him, it wasn't just clothing. It was lineage. It was legacy. And today, it was armor. The cabin doors opened with a familiar chime. As Nathaniel stepped into first class, the cabin's muted beige and chrome interiors contrasted sharply with the vibrance of his attire. 3 flight attendants near the galley. Brian, tall and smirking. Jessica, with a high ponytail and clipboard. And Heather, the senior among them with a clipped British tone, paused their conversation. Brian's eyebrows shot up. "Look what the wind blew in," he murmured, just low enough to avoid the PA system, but not enough to escape notice. Jessica covered her mouth, trying, and failing, to suppress a giggle. "He looks like he's heading to a cultural parade, not a corporate suite." Heather leaned in closer. "Maybe he mistook the boarding gate for a runway. Fashion Week must have changed terminals." They laughed, short, biting, dismissive. Nathaniel heard it. He always heard it. Not just the words, but the tone behind them. The razor-thin veil of civility masking judgment. His gaze didn't falter. He nodded politely, presented his digital boarding pass, and said, "Seat 1A, thank you." Heather glanced at the pass, her smile faltering when she realized he indeed belonged in first class. "Of course," she said stiffly. "Right this way." As he moved toward his seat, the hush of the cabin returned. Business travelers typed away on laptops. A woman in pearls adjusted her scarf. No one looked at him directly, yet every eye seemed to track him from behind sunglasses and tablet screens. Nathaniel was used to the scrutiny, the unspoken "you don't belong here" that trailed him into boardrooms, hotel lobbies, and now airplane cabins. He settled into his seat, placed his leather briefcase beneath the seat in front, and smoothed the folds of his agbada. His hands, steady and practiced, flipped open his presentation notes. Today was no ordinary flight. He was en route to finalize a $400 million safety systems deal with Apex Airways, a system he'd spent a decade perfecting. Across the aisle, a man in a navy suit watched him, expression unreadable. A few rows back, a child's face peeked between the seats. A young black boy, maybe 10 or 11, wide-eyed and curious. Nathaniel offered a smile. The boy grinned shyly, then ducked behind his mother. Near the rear of the first-class section, a woman in her 60s, discreet in a gray travel set, lifted her phone. Not to text, not to call. She turned on the camera and began to record, subtly, silently, capturing the glances, the whispered laughter, the body language of the 3 flight attendants still murmuring near the galley. She didn't interfere. Not yet. Heather returned with a tray of pre-flight drinks. She breezed past Nathaniel without a glance, placing orange juice and champagne in front of passengers on either side. Nathaniel cleared his throat softly. Heather blinked, surprised. "Oh, would you like something? Sparkling water, please." She disappeared without a word, returning moments later with a lukewarm bottle and no glass. She placed it on his tray table with a tight smile. "We're short on glasses at the moment." Nathaniel didn't respond. He opened the bottle, took a sip, and resumed reviewing his notes. Behind him, Brian snickered, loud enough this time. "Man's dressed like Wakanda meets Wall Street." Jessica let out a sharp laugh. Someone tell him Halloween's next month. Another passenger. The man in the navy suit shifted uncomfortably. The woman in gray kept recording. Nathaniel's fingers tightened around his stylus, but his face remained composed. He'd endured worse, but something about today, the weight of this moment, the presence of that young boy watching, made the insult land differently. It wasn't just ignorance. It was audacity. His phone buzzed. A reminder. Meeting with Apex exec team, 3:00 p.m., Midtown HQ. He exhaled slowly, composed himself. Suddenly, a jolt of turbulence rocked the aircraft slightly, the kind that barely registered to seasoned travelers. Jessica, passing by with a tray, stumbled slightly and caught herself against Nathaniel's armrest. "Careful," he said calmly. Jessica shot him a look. "Maybe you shouldn't be wearing so much fabric. Takes up extra space." Nathaniel met her gaze. "Or maybe you should watch where you're going." Brian called from the galley. "You all right, Jess?" "Peachy," she replied, wiping her hands on her apron. She muttered under her breath, "It's like flying with royalty." Nathaniel said nothing, but he reached down to his briefcase, retrieved a slim leather notebook, and jotted something down. 3 names. No confrontation, just record-keeping. The woman in gray, still filming, tilted her phone slightly to capture the notebook entry. Seatbelt signs lit. Final boarding call was made. A flight attendant began reciting the safety demonstration. Nathaniel closed his eyes for a moment, resting his head back. It was going to be a long flight. Nathaniel shifted slightly in his seat, his mind drifting back through years of grit and quiet defiance. The soft hum of the aircraft engines faded as the voice of his mother echoed in his memory. "Don't you ever dim your light for no one, baby. Not for teachers, not for bosses, not even for presidents. If your light's too bright for them, they can blink." He had been 8 years old, sitting cross-legged on a torn couch in their tiny apartment on the south side of Chicago. The power had been out again, so they'd studied math problems by candlelight. His mother, Eleanor Carter, had worked 3 jobs: cafeteria worker, night janitor, and Sunday shuttle bus driver. And still, she never missed a single school meeting or a bedtime pep talk. Nathaniel had carried her words with him through every AP exam, every scholarship rejection, every raised eyebrow from professors who assumed the black kid in the front row was in the wrong classroom. He'd carried them through MIT, through his NASA fellowship, through launching his own aerospace company from a garage with $4,000 and a second-hand server. And he carried them now into this first-class cabin, wearing the cloth of his ancestors, while en route to close the most significant deal of his life. Across the aisle, a woman in a tailored linen suit glanced at his outfit, then at the open technical diagrams in his lap. Her expression suggested confusion, maybe curiosity, but no smile. Jessica reappeared, making another pass through the cabin. She paused at his row, frowning at the complex illustrations. "Traveling for fun?" she asked with forced cheer, gesturing to the stack of aerospace schematics in front of him. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. "Business," she blinked. "Oh, interesting." Her tone shifted, betraying her skepticism. "What kind of business, if you don't mind me asking?" "I do a bit of engineering consulting," he replied simply, offering no further explanation. He had learned long ago that some people weren't asking out of interest, but to probe for inconsistencies. Jessica hovered for a second too long, then moved on. Nathaniel turned back to his documents, flipping through flight route optimization models and emergency descent simulation metrics. Behind the numbers, there was a larger message, one that had driven him for years. Black brilliance didn't require permission. It demanded space. He tapped a small folder in the corner of his tablet screen. A document opened. Letterhead bearing the silver Apex Airways emblem. The language was formal, but the signature at the bottom was scrawled in blue ink. "Looking forward to seeing you this afternoon, Nate. GW." Nathaniel reread it. Even after multiple exchanges, the personal note still felt surreal. GW wasn't just another executive. He was the executive. And yet, the crew walking this cabin had no clue who Nathaniel was, and perhaps worse, had decided who he couldn't be. From 2 rows behind, a soft voice piped up. "Excuse me, sir," said a boy. It was Elijah, the same child who had peeked between the seats earlier. He stood just beside his mother, who gave a quiet nod of encouragement. Nathaniel smiled. "Hey there. Your clothes are really cool," Elijah said. "My grandma showed me patterns like that in a book. Are they real?" "They're very real," Nathaniel said warmly. "This one," he pointed to a diamond-shaped symbol on his sleeve, "stands for clarity and intelligence." Elijah's eyes widened. "That's awesome. Are you a teacher?" Nathaniel chuckled. "Not exactly. I help design systems that make flying safer." Elijah grinned. "Like a plane doctor?" "Exactly like that," Nathaniel said. The boy's mother gently tapped his shoulder. "Let's not bother the gentleman, Eli." "It's not a bother," Nathaniel replied. "Anytime." As the two returned to their seats, Brian passed by, eyeing the interaction with thinly veiled annoyance. He moved down the aisle without a word. Nathaniel tapped his stylus, highlighted a line in his presentation notes. He needed to be razor sharp this afternoon. The proposal for Nav Secure wasn't just about selling a product. It was about reshaping how airlines approach safety through predictive analytics, AI-generated risk matrices, and real-time crew behavior diagnostics. Apex had flirted with competing systems for years, but it was Nathaniel's prototype that had caught the attention of their CEO, not just because of the tech, but because Nathaniel had framed it as a culture shift, not just an upgrade. His solution didn't just prevent crashes, it prevented complacency. He flipped back to the letter again. "See you at 3 Asuktak, Nate. Bring that brilliant mind of yours." Underneath the digital ink was a footer. Gregory Wallace, Chief Executive Officer, Apex Airways. The cabin intercom pinged. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be taxiing shortly. Please take your seats and ensure all carry-ons are secured." Nathaniel closed the file and turned off the tablet screen. He adjusted the hem of his agbada, ignoring the side glances from nearby passengers. Let them wonder. Let them assume. He'd always preferred that they underestimate him. It made the reveal more satisfying. As Heather passed through for final checks, she paused. "Just to confirm, sir, seat 1A is yours?" "Yes." She scanned the pass again. Her tone was polite, but her eyes gave her away. Still trying to reconcile his outfit, his skin, his documents, with this particular seat in first class. Nathaniel gave her a warm, measured smile. "Planning to be with us long?" she asked. "Oh," Nathaniel replied, voice steady. "I'll be around longer than you think." Heather blinked, taken aback by the subtle edge in his tone. Then she moved on. Behind Nathaniel, the woman in gray, still quiet, still filming, tapped her phone to save the video file she'd captured moments before. She looked down at the file name she typed in quietly. Prejudice Record Woman A. The fastened seatbelt sign blinked off with a soft chime as Apex Airways Flight 711 leveled out at cruising altitude. The atmosphere in first class loosened slightly. Laptops opened, shoes came off, and conversations resumed at a quiet murmur. But for Nathaniel, the tension hadn't eased. It had just shifted. He reviewed the printouts in his lap. Schematics, flow diagrams, operational thresholds. His notes were color-coded, pristine. Everything was in order. He reached for the warm bottle of sparkling water Heather had delivered earlier and glanced up to see her and Brian whispering again by the galley. Their glances were no longer subtle. Jessica pushed a silver cart slowly down the aisle, stopping at each row to offer drinks and snacks. Her smile was automatic, professional. But when she reached Nathaniel's seat, her expression faltered. She didn't meet his eyes. "Would you like anything?" she asked flatly. "Sparkling water, if you have it cold this time," Nathaniel said, voice calm. Jessica turned without a word and opened the top drawer of the cart. She retrieved a chilled bottle, placed it in a cup, and moved to hand it to him. That's when it happened. Her hand slipped. Whether accidental or deliberate, Nathaniel couldn't say for sure. But the result was unmistakable. The glass tipped, and a cold splash of carbonated water arced across his chest and lap. Tiny droplets peppered the deep indigo of his agbada, staining the embroidery with translucent blotches. Worse, several pages of his presentation were soaked. Ink smudged. Corners curled. Gasps came from nearby seats. "Oh no!" Jessica exclaimed, a beat too late. "I'm so sorry." She handed him a single cocktail napkin. "One. At least it's a bold color," she added with a half smile. "Maybe no one will notice the water." Nathaniel froze. The entire row went still. Passengers shifted uncomfortably. The man across the aisle narrowed his eyes. The elderly woman in gray, several rows back, lifted her phone again and tapped record. Elijah peeked again between the seats. His small eyes were wide, watching, learning. Nathaniel stared at the wet fabric, the ruined notes. He felt the burn of old memories, not the splash of water, but the decades of being accidentally excluded, unintentionally disrespected. From the school teacher who laughed when he said he wanted to be an engineer to the receptionist who once asked if he was here for janitorial services before an investor pitch. His hand closed around the soaked paper. Slowly, deliberately, he set the napkin aside. He opened his briefcase, retrieved a dry microfiber cloth, and began blotting the documents, saying nothing. Brian sauntered up, arms folded. "Accidents happen," he said. "No need to escalate anything." Nathaniel looked up at him, expression unreadable. "I didn't say a word," he replied evenly. "But thank you for your insight." Brian blinked. "Just saying, no need to get dramatic." Nathaniel returned to his cleanup. Heather appeared next, lips pressed into a thin line. "Is there a problem here?" Jessica was already backing away from the scene. "I apologized," she said over her shoulder. "It was an accident." Nathaniel glanced between the three of them. Then, without a word, he reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. Passengers around him turned to watch. He unlocked the screen with a fingerprint and tapped on his contacts. For a moment, the air grew heavy with expectation. Jessica stopped moving. Brian's arms slowly uncrossed. Heather's brows lifted. Nathaniel scrolled, paused, and then hovered his thumb over a name labeled Gregory W., private line. He hesitated. The screen stayed on the contact for a moment, then dimmed. He pressed the power button. The phone screen went black. He slipped it back into his jacket. A breathless pause passed through the cabin. Then, silence. Brian smirked faintly. Jessica turned away. Heather exhaled, almost in relief, and resumed her service. To the casual observer, it looked like Nathaniel had considered making a call and backed down. Like he'd chosen not to escalate. Like he'd decided to let it go. But the woman in gray saw differently. From her discreet vantage point near the rear of first class, she narrowed her eyes. She watched the muscles in Nathaniel's jaw tighten. She saw the shift in his shoulders, the slight tremor in his fingers as he reassembled his notes. She didn't stop recording. Elijah, too, was watching. Nathaniel caught his gaze again. The boy didn't smile this time. He looked concerned, confused. Nathaniel gave him a small, tired nod. He wasn't done. He was calculating. He reached into his briefcase again and pulled out a second folder. This one laminated, protected. Inside were backup printouts, an encrypted flash drive, and a sealed envelope with an embossed Apex Airways logo. He placed the wet pages into a separate pocket, methodically organizing his materials again. The man across the aisle finally spoke. "You handled that with more grace than most." Nathaniel didn't look up. "That's not always a compliment." The man nodded, as if chastened. Another chime rang out. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be serving lunch shortly. Please return to your seats and lower your tray tables." As the cabin returned to motion, Nathaniel sat still. His thoughts weren't on the meal. They were on the presentation, the stakes, the timing, and on the call he hadn't made yet. He checked the time. 11:37 a.m. His meeting was in less than 4 hours. The storm hadn't arrived, but it was building. The lunch service rolled through first class with a kind of selective hospitality. Napkins laid perfectly for some, wine offered generously for others. But when Jessica returned to Nathaniel's row, her smile had stiffened into something performative. "We're out of the chicken," she said crisply, not bothering to ask for his preference. "But we can offer you a vegetarian plate. It's light. Probably better for a long day of meetings anyway." Nathaniel gave a small nod. "That'll be fine." She placed the tray on his table with a clink louder than necessary and lingered for a second too long. Then, in a tone sweetened with professional courtesy but soured by something sharper, she added, "If you're not satisfied with your experience today, there's an option to disembark at our transfer gate in Charlotte. Just a suggestion, in case this route isn't meeting your expectations." Nathaniel paused mid-bite. He looked up at her with a quiet stillness that made even the air feel heavy. "No need," he said calmly. "I'll reach my destination just fine." Jessica blinked, as if unsure whether her veiled suggestion had been understood or ignored. She turned away, her smile flickering, and disappeared behind the galley curtain. Nathaniel returned to his meal, but the food had lost its flavor. He picked at it mechanically, his thoughts elsewhere. He reached for the leather notebook in his lap and opened to a clean page. At the top, he wrote 3 names: Heather, Brian, Jessica. Beside each, a growing list of microaggressions, smirks, comments, inconsistencies in service, the water incident. He wrote without emotion, just meticulous documentation. Engineers didn't guess, they recorded. Across the aisle, the Asian woman who had earlier made eye contact leaned subtly toward him. Her gaze was steady, sympathetic. She didn't speak, but she didn't look away either. Nathaniel gave her a respectful nod. Moments later, he felt a presence beside him. A soft voice spoke just over his shoulder. "You're more composed than most people would be. I've seen less get reported to the captain." It was the woman from the back, the one with silver gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Up close, she looked like someone who'd lived several lives and survived all of them with her dignity intact. Her outfit was unremarkable, soft gray cardigan, sensible flats. But her posture was impeccable, and her presence radiated calm authority. Nathaniel turned slightly. "Just trying to get to New York in one piece." She offered a faint smile. "You will, and when you get there, a few people are going to have a very long day." His brow furrowed slightly. "Do I know you?" "No, but I know who you are, Mr. Carter," she said softly. "And so will they soon." Before he could ask more, she stepped away, returning to her seat as if nothing had passed between them. Nathaniel sat in silence for a few seconds, processing her words. He wasn't easily surprised, but that had caught him off guard. Who was she? And how did she know his name? He glanced at the envelope in his briefcase, still sealed and bearing the Apex logo. Only a handful of people had seen the formal correspondence: his legal team, the CEO, and a few execs at the company's headquarters. A possibility crept in. Board member? Retired exec? Internal investigator? The kind of person airlines kept on flights to observe operations discreetly. His instincts buzzed, but he shelved the thought for later. Beside him, the damp edges of his earlier documents had dried, curling slightly at the corners. He smoothed them out, but the blemish remained, a quiet echo of the disrespect he'd swallowed. The cabin lights dimmed slightly, signaling the start of quiet time. Most passengers adjusted their seats or donned headphones. Heather walked by, offering plush blankets, skipping Nathaniel's row entirely. He made another note in his notebook. A few rows behind, Elijah stirred. His mother whispered something to him, but his eyes were fixed on Nathaniel. The boy mouthed silently, "Are you okay?" Nathaniel gave a small thumbs up. It was a simple gesture, but behind it was something heavier. I see you. I see what you're learning from this. I'm still here. That boy didn't need to see another black man erupt. He needed to see one rise. Time passed slowly in the artificial night of the cabin. Nathaniel closed his eyes briefly, letting his breathing slow, grounding himself. Meditation wasn't part of his morning routine. It was a survival tactic learned through years of corporate stonewalling, of conferences where he was the only black engineer in the room, of dinners where donors assumed he was valet. He'd spent a lifetime building systems designed to catch patterns of turbulence, failure, and malfunction. He could see this pattern clearly too. When he opened his eyes, Heather was back. She stood at the front of the cabin, speaking quietly into the phone near the galley. Her posture was stiff, glancing back toward Nathaniel's row. Another note. Monitoring cabin. Possibly escalating. He didn't flinch. If they wanted escalation, they'd find themselves unprepared for the kind he brought. He took out his tablet again and tapped into the NAV Secure prototype's hidden interface, still running in passive mode, quietly collecting behavioral data from environmental sensors and passenger interactions. This wasn't just about safety anymore. It was becoming a case study. A few rows behind him, the woman in gray watched from behind a book she wasn't reading. She made a small note of her own, on a napkin tucked into her purse. Carter, NAV Secure, Apex. Still dignified, still dangerous, and still watching. The cabin had grown quieter as most passengers drifted into a post-lunch lull, lulled by dimmed lights and white noise. Nathaniel remained upright, eyes scanning a digital model on his laptop screen. He wasn't the kind of man who napped on flights, especially not today. His fingers moved swiftly across the trackpad, adjusting flight path simulations and toggling between data overlays. The animated model on screen, a stylized rendering of a passenger jet's internal safety diagnostics, pulsed softly in shades of blue and orange. Each pulse represented a system check, each flicker a sensor reading. It was elegant, complex, and powerful. Nathaniel wasn't rehearsing his presentation anymore. He was perfecting it. The NAV Secure system had come a long way since its earliest prototype. Back then, it could only process a narrow stream of cockpit data. Now, it predicted human error patterns, mechanical drift, even subtle irregularities in crew performance, all in real time, quietly, silently, preventing disaster before the cockpit even realized it was coming. His attention was broken by a quiet voice. "What you working on?" Elijah had crept forward again, this time with his mother's hesitant blessing. He stood beside Nathaniel's seat, his head just above the tray table line, eyes fixed on the glowing screen. Nathaniel smiled. "Just some airplane homework." The boy chuckled. "Looks way cooler than mine." Nathaniel swiveled the laptop slightly to give Elijah a better view. "This is a simulation. It shows how planes talk to themselves when something's wrong, before people even notice." Elijah squinted. "So, like an early warning system?" "Exactly," Nathaniel nodded. "It spots the small things before they become big problems." "Whoa," the boy whispered. "Like when my mom says I'm about to get in trouble before I even do anything." Nathaniel laughed. "Pretty much." He clicked to another tab, preparing to show a model of airflow anomalies during high-altitude turbulence. But as the animation loaded, the screen stuttered. Pixels froze, then turned black. Nathaniel tapped the keyboard. The laptop beeped, then flickered. An error message appeared. "Corrupt file detected. Unable to render." He frowned. He hadn't seen that before. Not with this model. He tried again. Another crash. His pulse quickened. Not panic, just annoyance. The presentation file, even with backups, had been compromised, maybe from the earlier water spill. The USB port still had moisture residue near the contacts. He hadn't had time to run diagnostics. He closed the lid slowly, eyes narrowing. Elijah looked up at him. "Is it broken?" "Temporarily," Nathaniel said, his tone calm. It's just one of many versions. Do you have another one? Nathaniel gave a gentle nod. Always. The boy shifted his weight, then asked, almost casually, "Are you the guy my mom said invented the alert system that saved those people on that Seattle flight last year?" Nathaniel's eyes met Elijah's. For a moment, silence. "What did your mom say?" he asked softly. "She was talking on the phone last week. Said she hoped I'd meet someone named Carter on this trip. Said he wasn't just smart, but he was brave too. That he didn't need to yell to be powerful. That people should know his name. Like yours." Nathaniel blinked once, slowly. So the mother knew. Maybe more than she'd let on. He smiled gently. "That was a team effort. I just built part of the system." "But your name's Carter, right?" "It is." "That's so cool," Elijah said, clearly impressed. "I want to make stuff like that one day, but my teacher says I get distracted too easily." Nathaniel leaned in. Distraction isn't failure. Sometimes it's just curiosity dressed in a loud outfit. Elijah laughed again. "Okay, buddy," his mother called softly from behind. "Let Mr. Carter work." Elijah gave a small wave and retreated down the aisle. Nathaniel's laptop remained closed on his tray. His thoughts raced. So, the boy's mother knew his identity and hadn't said a word. She hadn't approached him, hadn't used the knowledge for small talk or validation. She'd simply observed and let her son form his own conclusions. That kind of restraint was rare. From behind, the woman in gray had watched the entire interaction. She scribbled something on her napkin again, but this time, she smiled faintly. Twist or not, Nathaniel's identity was leaking out. Not through confrontation, but through recognition. Through whispers, intuition, and the ripple of reputation. Yet, in the eyes of the flight crew, he was still just another passenger. Too well dressed for coach, too bold for first class, and too quiet to be respected. Nathaniel didn't mind that they didn't know. Not yet. He turned his attention back to the documents in his bag. Most were fine, dry enough, legible. But the section containing visual simulations would need re-rendering, and he'd have to reset his backup drive as soon as he landed. Still salvageable. Still on track. He pulled out his notebook again and added a single line beneath the crew's names. Presentation materials compromised. Maintain composure. Rebuild with redundancy. He clicked his pen twice and looked forward, toward the closed curtain separating first class from the rest of the plane. There was still time, and more importantly, there was still control. What the attendants didn't realize, what most people never realized, was that Nathaniel's quiet wasn't surrender. It was strategy. The laptop remained closed. The documents lay resorted, smoothed, drying in layers of paper towels Nathaniel had requested without fanfare. The damage had been done, not just to his presentation, but to the pretense of courtesy that had thinned and torn with every whispered joke, every withheld amenity, every careful, cutting slight. Still, Nathaniel hadn't raised his voice, hadn't demanded retribution, but he was done playing along. He reached into his inner pocket again and pulled out his phone, the same one he had powered off earlier. This time there was no hesitation. He unlocked it, scrolled through contacts, and tapped the one labeled Gregory W., direct line. The call rang once, twice. A click. "Gregory Wallace's office." A crisp female voice answered. "This is Marissa." Nathaniel exhaled. "Hi, Marissa, this is Nathaniel Carter. Is Greg available?" There was a beat, the recognition registering. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Carter. Mr. Wallace is currently in a closed session with the Secretary of Transportation. It's urgent regulatory business. He's requested not to be disturbed unless it's a crisis. May I take a message?" Nathaniel's jaw flexed. His voice remained level. "Tell him I'm en route to his office, and that I've encountered a situation that may compromise our conversation later today. Let him decide how urgent that is." Another beat. "I'll make a note, but I have to be transparent. I doubt he'll be reachable until the top of the hour." Nathaniel smiled thinly. "Thank you, Marissa." He ended the call. Across the aisle, the businessman who had quietly observed earlier shifted in his seat. He'd heard the name Gregory Wallace, and by the way his eyes widened, he clearly knew who that was. A ripple of unease spread among the front cabin passengers. Nathaniel tucked the phone back into his jacket, then reached into his briefcase and retrieved a secondary device, a slim black tablet with no logo and a biometric sensor on the side. He unlocked it, tapped 3 times on a discrete icon, and a soft chime confirmed, "Nav Secure Beta Mode activated." The prototype system's interface lit up, clean, minimalist, displaying a 3D render of the aircraft's internal structure, rows of seats, cockpit data, crew movement, thermal maps. But the real power of the prototype was something no one else on board knew existed: live behavioral monitoring. Using a combination of environmental audio capture, gesture recognition from seatback cameras, and AI-trained analysis of tone and intent, NavSecure's private beta could, with 87% accuracy, flag emerging tension patterns between crew and passengers before they escalated into service failures, or worse, legal risk. And now, it was recording. Nathaniel tapped again. Record mode. On. The interface blinked. Internal flight crew behavior now being documented under encrypted live session protocol. Twist number 4 had just been set in motion, but not the one the flight crew expected. This wasn't a complaint. This wasn't escalation. It was documentation. Quiet, legal, impeccable. The system had been designed for Apex's own executive leadership, a layer of protective oversight, especially in light of prior lawsuits. But Nathaniel, as the lead engineer and founder of NavSecure's parent company, still had direct developer access, and he had just turned the cameras inward. Brian passed by again, still smirking, this time commenting to another attendant, "Man's taking notes like he's gonna teach a class after this." Nathaniel didn't react, but the software caught the tone, the expression, the context. Flagged. Stored. Jessica reappeared, offering Elijah a pack of pretzels with a bright smile, but when she glanced toward Nathaniel, her expression hardened. No offer, no acknowledgement. Flagged. Stored. Heather lingered near the cockpit, whispering to the pilot through the cracked door, gesturing vaguely in Nathaniel's direction. Flagged. Stored. From her seat in the rear of first class, the woman in gray observed all of it. Though she didn't understand what Nathaniel had just activated, she sensed the shift. It wasn't in his posture, still straight, still calm. It was in his intent. He wasn't weathering the storm anymore. He had become the barometric pressure. 30 rows back, Elijah leaned toward the aisle and whispered to his mother, "He called someone really important, didn't he?" His mother nodded slowly, her face unreadable. Yes, he did. As the minutes passed, Nathaniel watched the system feed update in real time, quiet metrics appearing in the corners of the interface, sentiment trends in speech, comparison against standard hospitality baselines, deviation in facial tension among crew. He tapped once more. Share feed. Pending contact. No destination yet. Not until he decided. Not until Gregory Wallace emerged from his meeting and realized what was brewing 30,000 feet in the air. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be encountering some minor turbulence for the next 20 minutes. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." Nathaniel smiled faintly. The turbulence had already started, and it had nothing to do with air pressure. He closed the tablet, tucked it back into the briefcase, and reached for his now dry presentation packet. Across the aisle, the businessman gave him a look, half curious, half impressed. Nathaniel returned it with a nod. He wasn't done yet. He was just warming up. Nathaniel adjusted the angle of his seat, not for comfort, but for visibility. The screen of his slim black tablet glowed in low light as the NavSecure prototype continued running silently. Passengers appeared relaxed on the surface, but Nathaniel's interface told a deeper truth. Spikes in tension radiated across the first-class cabin, particularly among the crew. A stream of color-coded signals pulsed in the corner. Yellow for minor tone shifts, orange for passive-aggressive conduct, red for escalated microaggressions. Brian and Heather were deep orange. Jessica had dipped into red more than once. Then, something unexpected happened. A new alert blinked on the screen. Cabin anomaly detected. Nathaniel tapped the notification. The system had flagged an irregularity, not in behavior, but in cabin environment sensors. Specifically, the overhead air pressure regulators near the galley were reading inconsistent flow compared to baseline safety metrics. He frowned. That kind of discrepancy didn't suggest immediate danger, but it wasn't something that should go unreported, especially on a flight certified under NavSecure's test parameters. And it hadn't been logged by the crew. The system cross-checked audio from the cockpit and crew comms, no mention of the anomaly, no action taken. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed. This wasn't just personal anymore. Now, it was professional. He tapped a command on the tablet. Export incident feed, presentation mode. A window popped up, ready to cast. Nathaniel reached up and connected to the aircraft's in-seat display system, a developer-level access reserved for diagnostics and presentation testing. A soft chime echoed across the first-class cabin. The entertainment screens in rows 1A through 1C blinked once, then changed. No movies, no news. Instead, a real-time video feed appeared on every monitor in his row, showing a top-down view of the first-class galley, time-stamped, with captioned subtitles of crew comments, environmental readings, and behavior flags. The moment Jessica had spilled water, the smirk from Brian, Heather's eye roll when skipping his drink, the unreported air pressure irregularity, all displayed with crystal clarity. Gasps erupted around him. "What is that?" a woman in 1C whispered. "Is that real?" asked a man across the aisle. The crew froze. Heather turned from the galley, her eyes narrowing as she noticed the screens. Brian's voice cracked slightly. "What the hell is that?" Nathaniel's voice was calm, but loud enough to carry. "This," he said, "is the beta version of your airline's most advanced behavioral monitoring and predictive safety system, NavSecure." He tapped again. The feed shifted to show a brief loop of the galley's overhead sensors, a flashing yellow indicating the airflow discrepancy. "This is also the unreported system anomaly occurring in your cabin right now," he added, "which, based on FAA protocol, should have been noted and addressed within 5 minutes. The silence was deafening. Jessica looked pale. Heather stepped forward, trying to regain control. "Sir, you're not authorized to broadcast." Her voice was cut off by the sudden ringing of Nathaniel's phone. He looked at the screen. Gregory Wallace. Incoming call. Without hesitation, he answered. "Nate," the voice on the other end said, loud enough for passengers nearby to hear. "What the hell is going on up there?" Nathaniel stood, phone to his ear, facing the aisle. "Good timing," he said coolly. "Care to speak directly to your staff?" There was a pause. Then, "Put me on speaker." Nathaniel tapped the screen and held the phone up. "Good afternoon," came the deep, authoritative voice of Apex Airways CEO Gregory Wallace. "This is Greg Wallace, for anyone who doesn't know. I'm the person responsible for everything this airline does, or fails to do." The cabin went still. A few passengers began recording. Jessica's hands trembled slightly. Brian stepped backward. "And I'd like to have a quick word with the lead crew member," Gregory continued. "Catherine Mills, are you on board today?" Heather cleared her throat. "Heather, I'm the acting lead on this flight." "Ah," Gregory said. "So you're the one ignoring safety flags and mocking one of our most important partners. Not ideal, Heather." She blinked, caught completely off guard. "Sir, with all due respect." "Oh," Gregory cut in. "Respect is earned, Heather. And right now, I don't hear any in your tone." A pause. Then Gregory added, "And before you embarrass yourself further, you're talking to Nathaniel Carter, MIT valedictorian, FAA consultant, lead systems engineer behind the NavSecure project we're preparing to launch fleet-wide, or as I knew him in college, Nate Zero Failure Carter. A ripple of laughter moved through the cabin, not mocking, but stunned. Even the businessman in 2B leaned forward now, visibly impressed. Heather's lips parted. Wait, he's… Yes, Gregory said. He's the man you've spent this flight ignoring, insulting, and marginalizing. And now he's also the man whose system just caught a failure your crew didn't. Nathaniel didn't gloat. He didn't need to. He simply turned the phone toward the passengers. Let Gregory's voice continue filling the cabin. From this moment forward, Gregory continued, Mr. Carter is to be treated with the same respect you'd give me if I were in that seat. Actually, more. Because unlike me, he just saved your asses in real time. Jessica sank into the jump seat. Brian had gone completely still. Even Heather's practiced poise had cracked. Gregory's voice softened. Nate, I'll meet you personally when you land. We'll debrief, fix this, and make sure your system goes live across our entire fleet, with your name at the top of the integration credits. Nathaniel nodded once. Appreciated, Greg. He ended the call. The cabin sat in stunned silence. Then, slowly, the woman in gray rose from her seat and clapped. Just once. The sound echoed like thunder in the tight space. Others joined in. A scattered, awkward applause. Nathaniel sat down again, tablet still in hand. The screen dimmed. Recording saved. Anomaly flagged. Crew performance below standard. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. The system had spoken, and so had power. Heather's face, usually a mask of polished professionalism, had begun to crumble. Her jaw tightened, nostrils flared, and a visible flush crept up her neck. She took a step forward, trying to reclaim some semblance of authority. This is completely out of context, she began, voice rising. None of this footage shows the full picture. He's been confrontational from the start. Jessica shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable. Brian stood rigid, arms folded, but his usual smirk had vanished. Nathaniel sat calmly, tablet resting on his lap like a judge's gavel. He didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. Heather kept going, her words more frantic now. You can't just pull footage from nowhere and expect people to understand what really happened. There's a protocol. Protocol, said a voice from the rear of the cabin, quiet but firm, is exactly what was missing here. Heads turned. The woman in gray rose slowly from her seat, phone in hand. All eyes were on her. She walked toward the front with a grace that made every footstep feel like punctuation. When she reached Nathaniel's row, she stopped and held up her phone. I've been recording since boarding, she said clearly, her voice slicing through the silence. From the moment this man was mocked for his clothing, to the water spill, to the sarcastic comments and selective service, all of it. Heather opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The woman turned to the nearest passenger. Would you mind holding this? She asked, handing over her phone. The passenger nodded, holding it steady as the video played. It was all there. Heather's whisper near the jet bridge. Brian's "Halloween's months away" joke. Jessica's smirk when the water spilled. The moments of silence when Nathaniel was skipped for service, while others were pampered. There was no commentary, no voiceover, just cold, impartial observation. And it was devastating. Heather's composure shattered. That's illegal, she said weakly, pointing at the phone. You can't just film people like that. It's legal when you're in a public-facing role on a commercial flight, the woman replied, especially when there's evidence of discrimination. Someone from row 2 whispered, Oh my God. Nathaniel said nothing. He merely tapped a command on his tablet. The overhead screens flicked off. The show was over. For now. Another voice came over the intercom. Miss Mills, please report to the front cabin. Heather froze. Jessica looked at her, eyes wide. Brian suddenly became fascinated with the floor. Then a figure emerged from the cockpit. A woman with graying auburn hair and a captain's badge on her lapel. She didn't speak right away. She simply looked at Heather. Catherine Mills, the woman introduced herself to the cabin. I'm the lead flight attendant for Apex's Southeast Division, and I've just joined the flight via onboard override. Heather stammered. There was no intention to… Catherine held up a hand. I'm not here for your excuses. I've already received a call from Executive Command, and I've reviewed the preliminary logs from NavSecure's trial feed. That, combined with this passenger's footage, gives me more than enough to proceed. Brian finally spoke. This is unnecessary. We were just doing our jobs. Catherine's gaze shifted to him like a scalpel. Is your job mocking a first-class passenger for wearing cultural attire? Is your job withholding service based on bias? Is your job creating an unsafe environment because of unreported cabin anomalies? No answer. She turned to Jessica. Anything you'd like to add? Jessica shook her head silently, her eyes fixed on the floor. At that moment, the silence was broken by the sound of small footsteps. Elijah. He had quietly walked up from the economy section, his hands clenched at his sides. His mother called after him, alarmed, but stopped when she saw his face. He stood in the aisle, looking up at Catherine, then at Heather, then at Nathaniel. Why? He asked, his voice small but steady. Do people like him get treated bad just because they wear something different? No one answered. He looked up at Nathaniel. You're the smartest person I've ever met. You didn't yell. You didn't even get mad, but they kept picking on you. Why? Nathaniel's expression softened, his voice calm as he crouched slightly to meet the boy's eye level. Sometimes, he said, when you wear something that reminds people of who they're not, or where they've never dared to go, they get scared. And scared people try to make others small. Elijah frowned. But that's dumb. It is, Nathaniel agreed. Heather shifted uncomfortably. Catherine turned to the boy and said gently, Thank you for your courage, young man. You've said what many of us were thinking. Elijah looked to Nathaniel for permission. Nathaniel nodded, and the boy returned to his mother's seat. The cabin still hushed in awe. Catherine addressed the crew. Effective immediately, Heather, Brian, and Jessica. You are relieved of in-flight duties for the remainder of this trip. Please move to the rear service area. Jessica looked stunned. Brian muttered something under his breath and stalked off. Heather hesitated, but Catherine's gaze left no room for negotiation. As the trio walked toward the back, the atmosphere shifted palpably. It was like pressure had lifted from the cabin, the air clearer, the tension broken. Catherine turned to Nathaniel. Mr. Carter, on behalf of Apex Airways, I offer a formal apology for what you've experienced. We failed today. Nathaniel gave a slight nod. Failure happens. What matters is how we respond. I intend to make sure it doesn't happen again. From the rear of the plane, spontaneous applause began. Quiet at first, then spreading. It wasn't raucous or performative. It was real, respectful, a recognition of dignity defended. Nathaniel sat back down. He didn't smile, but he allowed himself a breath. Not of relief, but of momentum. Because this wasn't the end. It was the middle, and he wasn't done yet. The final descent announcement echoed through the cabin with its usual sterile calm. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be landing shortly at JFK International Airport. Please ensure your seatbacks are upright and tray tables are stowed. But the cabin wasn't calm. It buzzed with the residual energy of what had just unfolded. Whispers, glances, quiet reassessments. The man once mocked for his clothes now sat in silence, surrounded by admiration, awe, and something that hadn't been there before. Respect. Nathaniel packed away the last of his materials, now carefully repacked in a dry portfolio. He didn't bother reopening the laptop. The damage had been repaired, not on his hard drive, but in the perception of the people around him. The kind of damage that took years to build up, seconds to be inflicted, and deliberate strength to confront. Elijah gave him a thumbs up from the aisle as his mother held him close. The woman in gray returned to her seat, tapping a message on her phone with a contented smile. The aircraft touched down smoothly on the JFK tarmac, but what greeted them beyond the runway wasn't business as usual. As the aircraft taxied to the gate, Several passengers noticed the cluster of figures waiting near the terminal windows. Suited individuals, holding tablets, wearing earpieces, some with cameras, others clearly media. Nathaniel saw them too. His phone buzzed. New message from Greg Wallace. "I'm at the gate. You'll want to be ready for this. And for the record, you crushed it." Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. He hadn't shared the nav secure footage with anyone yet. He tapped open the app. A blinking green icon appeared on the feed. Incident report auto-dispatched. Regulatory flag triggered. His jaw tightened slightly. Of course, the AI-driven protocol within Nav Secure had detected an unaddressed safety anomaly and multiple behavior violations. According to federal safety compliance thresholds, especially in a beta environment, that triggered an automatic transmission of the encrypted report to 3 preset endpoints. One of them was Apex Executive Security. Another was the Department of Transportation. The third, Apex Regulatory Oversight, which included Greg Wallace. The beta test hadn't just been for observation, it had been active. Nathaniel exhaled through his nose. The system had outed itself. The flight came to a full stop, and the cabin door opened with a gentle hiss. Instead of a regular gate agent, a small delegation in Apex lanyards stepped aboard. At the center stood Gregory Wallace, tall, composed, and wearing the quiet confidence of a man who knew the storm had finally broken in his favor. His eyes landed immediately on Nathaniel. He stepped forward and extended a hand. "You just beta tested the most powerful protocol we've ever deployed," he said, his voice carrying through the stunned silence of first class. "And I've never been prouder of a partner or a friend." Nathaniel rose, taking the offered hand in a firm shake. "Wasn't exactly the plan," he replied dryly. "But the data doesn't lie." Greg nodded. "And neither do the passengers, or the footage, or the metrics. The DOT already called. They've never seen an in-flight system flag so many actionable insights. In real time." Heather, Brian, and Jessica stood near the galley, subdued, eyes low. Jessica glanced at Nathaniel with something close to remorse. Brian looked like he was still processing the collapse of his assumed control. Greg stepped aside as a PR rep whispered in his ear. "News vans are already outside," he told Nathaniel. "The footage leaked. Not from you, not from us. Apparently someone in the cabin shared a clip from their seat screen. It's viral. And I mean, viral." Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. "Great. Good viral," Greg said quickly. "You're trending as the calmest man in corporate aviation history." Nathaniel said nothing, but the corner of his mouth twitched. Greg turned to the passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your cooperation during what became a unique flight experience. As CEO of Apex Airways, I want to personally acknowledge Mr. Nathaniel Carter, whose system and integrity ensured that every single moment of this journey was accounted for." A smattering of applause followed. Then a few more. Then most of the cabin. Elijah clapped the hardest. As Nathaniel stepped toward the door, Greg leaned in. "I've already set up a full board review of Nav Secure. The beta results just guaranteed a fleet-wide rollout, and your name's going on every panel." "I'll hold you to that," Nathaniel replied. Greg laughed. "I expect nothing less." Before exiting, Nathaniel turned one last time to face the crew. He didn't gloat, didn't lecture. He simply said, "Respect isn't a reaction, it's a standard." Then he stepped through the jet bridge, not as a passenger, not as a victim, but as the man who had just changed the game. Outside, the lights flashed. The press waited. But Nathaniel didn't stop to speak. Not yet. There was still a boardroom ahead. And this time, he wasn't just walking in with slides and specs. He was walking in with proof. The Apex Airways executive boardroom was a glass and steel cathedral perched high above Midtown Manhattan, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city's spine. But today, the view went unnoticed. All eyes were fixed on Nathaniel Carter. He stood at the head of the table, a large touchscreen behind him displaying the NAV Secure System's real-time analytics dashboard. Several clips from the now viral flight scrolled silently on the side. Not the humiliations or the mockery, but the transformation. The way the system had flagged live issues. The way it had captured passive failures and active ones alike. It was undeniable. It was elegant. It was revolutionary. Nathaniel wore a sharp charcoal suit this time, still modern, still striking, but subdued. The Kent cloth stayed folded neatly in his briefcase. He didn't need it to speak for him today. He'd earned the floor. "I'm not here to rehash what happened at 30,000 feet, he said, voice steady, measured. That's already been dissected. What I want to talk about is what comes next, not just for NAV Secure, but for the culture we allow to exist on the front lines of this industry." He tapped the screen once. The data changed. NAV Secure works. You've seen it. But tech only solves part of the problem. Because systems don't carry prejudice. People do. He turned to face the room. 15 executives in dark suits. A few nodded along. A few avoided eye contact. "So, I'm proposing a second clause to accompany the fleet-wide rollout. The cultural clause." The screen filled with 5 bold points. Mandatory anti-bias and cultural competency training for all customer-facing staff. Anonymous passenger reporting integrated into NAV Secure's feedback loop. Quarterly behavioral audits tied to bonus evaluations. Public reporting of customer treatment metrics by demographic group. Establishment of an internal diversity oversight committee with veto power on all frontline training protocols. Silence. Nathaniel let it hang. He knew the resistance wouldn't come from doubt in the technology. It would come from fear. And it did. Right on cue. Diane Halbrook, head of investor relations, cleared her throat. "Mr. Carter, with all due respect, your system is brilliant, and yesterday's flight proved its value beyond question. But these additional proposals are non-negotiable," Nathaniel finished. She blinked. "You have to understand. We have institutional shareholders. The moment we announce mandatory anti-bias training, let alone public demographic reporting, it becomes a political conversation." "It already is a political conversation," Nathaniel replied. "Your airline discriminated, publicly, repeatedly, on a flight that was being monitored for internal reform. If that video had leaked before NAV Secure flagged it, you'd be dealing with litigation, not policy." Another board member, Tom Reeve, Chief Operating Officer, interjected. "No one's denying we need to evolve. But culture change takes time. You're asking for structural reform tied to a technology deployment. That's a tough sell." Nathaniel looked around the room. Tougher than apologizing to a 10-year-old boy who watched a professional get humiliated in front of him? Silence again. Finally, the chairman of the board, Leonard Byrne, spoke. "Mr. Carter, what you're proposing is admirable. Necessary even. But let's be strategic. Let us roll out the tech first. Build confidence. Ease in the cultural changes in Phase 2. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed slightly. "You want the change," he said slowly, "without the discomfort." Leonard didn't respond. Nathaniel nodded once. Then, calmly, he pulled a folder from his bag, slid it across the table. "Then here's my counter-proposal," he said. The folder contained a single page. Everyone leaned in. It was an email, pre-written, simple, addressed to Gregory Wallace, CC to Apex's legal counsel. Subject: termination of contract, NAV Secure Partnership. Body: effective immediately. Carter Aero Systems is withdrawing its licensing agreement and halting all further deployment of the NAV Secure system to Apex Airways. This includes all beta integrations, support channels, and planned expansion discussions. Signed, Nathaniel R. Carter, CEO. The room froze. "You're bluffing," Diane said flatly. Nathaniel tapped his phone. The email was queued. His finger hovered over send. "I came here prepared to deliver 2 things," he said. "Innovation and integrity. I won't compromise one for the other. You'll lose millions, Tom warned. Nathaniel looked him in the eye. I've lost more than money before. This isn't about capital. This is about precedent. Someone at the far end of the table cursed under their breath. Then the door opened. Gregory Wallace stepped in. He didn't sit. He looked at the screen, then at Nathaniel, then at the stunned board. I take it you've all seen the numbers, he said. The system works, and you've seen what it caught. Not just technical anomalies, but cultural ones. He turned to Leonard. And what's your response? Wait? Delay? Prioritize comfort over accountability? Leonard shifted. Greg, this isn't the time. No, Gregory said firmly. It's exactly the time. Because we just witnessed a prototype system do what no HR department, no policy memo, no top-down edict has managed to do in years. Force accountability in real time. And if that makes shareholders nervous, let them be nervous. Nervous people make better choices. He turned to Nathaniel. I support the clause. Nathaniel didn't speak. He simply tapped the screen. Email. Draft deleted. The board exhaled as one. Greg nodded once. We'll convene again in 48 hours, with new drafts, new language, and a clear commitment to everything Mr. Carter outlined. Understood. No one disagreed. Nathaniel closed his portfolio and stood. It wasn't a victory speech. It was a transition, from tolerated presence to transformative partner. The morning after the board meeting, Nathaniel sat alone in his Brooklyn office, an industrial loft space filled with sunlight, steel beams, and the hum of servers lining one wall. He sipped coffee from a plain white mug, staring at the city skyline outside the window. The email draft from the night before, the one that had nearly ended it all, was long gone. But the principle behind it, still alive. His phone buzzed. Caller ID, Gregory Wallace. He let it ring once before answering. Nate, Greg began, voice already in motion. We've redrafted the proposal. The board's on board, and I'd like to invite you back to help build the final implementation framework. This thing doesn't happen without you. Nathaniel didn't speak right away. He let the silence sit, measured and intentional. Greg understood. I know we got lucky. If you hadn't stood your ground, if NavSecure hadn't flagged what it did, it shouldn't take a prototype AI to force humans to do the right thing. Nathaniel interrupted gently. No, Greg agreed. But now that it has, we're listening. Nathaniel leaned back. Then I'll come back, under one condition. Name it. I want a Cultural Standards Council, Nathaniel said. Not a symbolic diversity committee, a decision-making body, independently staffed with power to veto frontline training and policy, including who gets promoted, who gets retained, and how field data is interpreted. Greg paused. You want governance authority outside of ops? I want cultural accountability embedded into operations, Nathaniel clarified. Without it, NavSecure's just surveillance. With it, it's transformation. Another pause. Then, done. Nathaniel nodded once. And one more thing, Greg added. There's been internal pressure to fire the 3 crew members involved. I pushed back. Nathaniel arched an eyebrow. Interesting move. They'll be placed in a cultural remediation program, Greg continued. Designed in partnership with the council, led by educators, not HR. If they refuse, then they're out. Nathaniel exhaled slowly. You've been thinking. I've been learning, Greg said. A rare admission, one Nathaniel respected. He ended the call shortly after, then leaned forward, placing his mug down beside a legal pad filled with scrawled notes. The plan was back on, but better this time. Stronger. Rooted in more than algorithms and optics. It was real now. By the time he returned to Apex headquarters 2 days later, the shift was already underway. Press briefings framed the NavSecure launch not just as a technical leap, but a culture-first innovation. Training decks were being rewritten. Internal emails used phrases like bias interruption metrics and customer equity data. But Nathaniel wasn't there for the press. He was there for something else. A knock at the door of his temporary office. Jessica. She stood in the doorway, fidgeting with the hem of her blazer, her posture stiff. Not the forced corporate poise she'd worn on the flight, but the kind of stiffness that came from discomfort and intention. "Mr. Carter," she said quietly. "Nathaniel's fine," he replied. She stepped in, glanced around nervously. "I asked if I could speak with you, privately." He gestured to the chair opposite his desk. "Go ahead." She sat, took a breath, then began. "I'm not proud of who I was on that flight," she said, voice low. "I didn't think I was biased. I told myself I was just following routine, matching energy. But that's a lie." Nathaniel didn't interrupt. "I saw your clothes and made a judgment," she continued. "And when you didn't act angry or reactive, I leaned into it. Because that's what we do when we think there won't be consequences, when we think someone won't push back." Nathaniel let the silence linger before responding. "And now that there were consequences? I'm grateful," she said quickly. "But not because I got caught, because I finally had to look at myself honestly, and I don't like what I see." He studied her for a moment. "Are you doing the remediation program?" "Yes," she nodded. "And more. I volunteered to be part of the first cohort designing the next training modules. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted to say it to your face." Nathaniel's voice was steady. "What matters isn't what you did, it's what you do next." Jessica nodded again, eyes glassy. "I'll do better." She stood to leave but paused at the door. "For what it's worth," she added, "Elijah thinks you're a superhero." Nathaniel chuckled softly. "Elijah's a smart kid." When she left, he returned to his notes, but not before opening a fresh page. Cultural Council, pilot members' proposal, former frontline crew passenger advocates, diversity education specialists, technologists, NAV secure liaisons, youth observer, rotating seat. He underlined that last one. Because Elijah didn't just represent the future, he demanded it. And now, thanks to a flight that was never supposed to make headlines, it had finally begun. 6 months had passed since Flight 711 turned from routine transit into a moment of reckoning. The airline industry, always slow to change and slower to admit failure, had been shaken. Not by outrage, but by something more enduring. Transformation. NAV Secure was no longer in beta. It had become the new gold standard. Every Apex Airways aircraft now bore a decal near the boarding door. Protected by NAV Secure, safety powered by insight. But some aircraft had a second line, reserved for the flagship routes, inspired by the integrity of Nathaniel Carter. On this crisp spring morning, Elijah stood at Gate A12 with a boarding pass clutched in his hand and a backpack slung over one shoulder. He was dressed a little too formally for a teenager, pressed shirt, slacks, and a tie he kept adjusting awkwardly. But his wide eyes and restless energy gave him away. It was his first flight alone. He wasn't going on vacation. He was going to intern. A real program, handpicked by the Apex Cultural Council to identify and mentor students from underrepresented backgrounds who showed an early interest in engineering and aviation systems. Elijah had written an essay about the man in seat 1A, and apparently it had reached the right inboxes. Now, at age 11, he was headed to Houston for a week-long STEM summit sponsored by the airline and hosted by Carter Aero Systems. He still couldn't believe it. "Boarding Group A," came the announcement. "Now welcoming interns and young scholars from the Apex Next Gen Initiative." Elijah stepped forward with a blend of nerves and excitement. As he entered the jet bridge, he looked up and saw it. A plaque just outside the aircraft door. "Welcome aboard, protected by the legacy of Nathaniel Carter." His heart jumped. Inside, the plane was sleek and modern, outfitted with the newest safety tech. Smart sensors in the overhead bins, climate control via AI-based optimization, and of course, the latest NAV Secure integration humming silently in the background. But what caught his attention most wasn't the technology. It was the woman waiting to greet him at the cabin door. Silver gray hair, a familiar calm in her eyes. "Welcome aboard," she said with a knowing smile. "It's good to see you again, Elijah." He blinked. "Wait, do I know you?" She leaned in conspiratorially. "We've met once, on a flight that changed quite a few things." He stared at her, jaw slightly open. "You're the lady with the phone, the one who filmed—" She winked. "The same," he laughed. "But why are you here now? Are you a flight attendant again?" She chuckled. "No, dear. I'm just accompanying this flight. Some legacies are worth witnessing." She guided him to his seat. First class again. "But I thought interns sat in the back," he said. "Not today," she replied, then added, almost as an afterthought, "Per council directive." The PA system crackled softly. "Good morning, passengers. Welcome aboard Apex Airways Flight 842 to Houston. As part of our commitment to integrity, safety, and innovation, today's flight operates under the NAV Secure platform, first developed by Carter Aero Systems. Please note that several members of our Cultural Council are also on board, monitoring our standards and engaging with select youth travelers from the Apex Next Gen initiative." Passengers looked around, some murmuring appreciatively. Elijah beamed. The woman sat down across the aisle, pulling out a slim book titled Systems of Trust. Elijah looked at her again, something still nagging at the edge of his memory. Finally, he asked, "What's your name?" She looked up and smiled. "Judith Wallace." Elijah blinked. "Wait, Wallace? Like—" "Yes," she said. "Gregory's my son." The final twist landed without fanfare. She was the mother of the CEO and the silent observer who had started recording on that fateful flight, long before anyone knew how far it would go. "I travel once a month with our crew," Judith explained. "Incognito, usually. My son says I give him more honest reports than any audit ever could." Elijah laughed again. "So, do you work for Apex?" She shook her head. "I work for accountability. Always have." The plane took off smoothly, clouds rushing past the windows. Elijah pulled out a tablet and opened the NAV Secure Junior app, a simplified dashboard designed for students in the internship program. It let him monitor environmental data, track pilot patterns, and even suggest ways to improve passenger comfort. It was gamified brilliance, but it was also real. And it existed because someone like Nathaniel Carter had refused to stay silent. Meanwhile, across the country, Nathaniel stood in a new wing of his company headquarters, a space designed not for engineers, but for educators. The Cultural Standards Council now operated from here. Its walls were covered in quotes from overlooked pioneers. Its conference table always had one extra seat reserved for student observers like Elijah. He glanced at the wall-mounted live map of Apex flights. Flight 842 had taken off right on time. A light blinked green. No anomalies. Cabin sentiment, stable. Crew behavior, optimal. He smiled. Outside, a camera crew waited for his keynote address at the STEM Summit. Another round of interviews. Another panel. But for now, he stood alone, watching the sky. His legacy wasn't just tech. It was change, seated quietly, nurtured by principle, and now carried by people who had once been passengers, witnesses, even skeptics. And one small boy who had once asked, "Why do people like you get treated bad just for wearing something different?" That boy now wore a tie, held a boarding pass, and monitored turbulence like a junior engineer. The legacy had taken flight, and it wasn't coming back down.